Welcome everybody. We're excited to be here this morning. We're going to be doing our Wonderment Apps Tech Roundtable for this week. We have some exciting things to share about the technical processes that we face here at Wonderment Apps, and we know exist for everybody working in technical management across all tech companies. In today's topic, we're going to explore a little bit about the handoff process between product management and product development into the technical team. What are some ways that we can optimize this process? What are some of the challenges we face? And how exactly do we approach this particular issue to create the best possible technology we can? Today on our Tech Roundtable, we've got a great group of engineers here from Wonderment Apps. We're excited to share their thoughts and how they approach these things. So we'll go ahead and I'll introduce each one of them to you. The first up is my partner here at Wonderment Apps, Faraz Tabibian. Faraz, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you've done in the past, and kind of what engineering is to you and some of your experience?
Thank you, Ryan. Hi guys, my name is Faraz Tabibian. I'm one of the co-founders and partners at Wonderment Apps. I have years of experience building and architecting technology solutions in many different verticals, such as e-commerce, media and entertainment, SaaS businesses, and finance. After being, the clients of a number of different product and technology agencies, about 6 years ago, Ryan and I decided to just start an agency, a product and technology agency to really connect with client needs and provide the best level of product and technology solutions. It's been a very interesting journey, and we had the experience of working with a number of big size clients such as NASA and stamps.com. And I think the journey continues on, and we are definitely super excited about that.
Awesome, thanks Faraz. Next up, Meenakshi Rao, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your engineering history?
Hi Ryan, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Hi everyone, my name is Meenakshi Rawat. I have been working with Wonderment team from almost 5 years. And during this 5 years, I have been working along with developing and managing technically oriented solutions for different clients. From startup to enterprise clients, we have been involved in managing and building number of legacy as well as from a lot of new applications which we have built from scratch. We bring a lot of diversified experience for our clients. So whatever the platform required for the front end or the back end or the infrastructure wise, we always put together all the requirements and bring a custom solution. We also make sure that we follow standard process across our development and project management journey so that we bring the same quality for every client. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, and next up, we have Timothy Nazar. Timothy's out of our Ukrainian office. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi Ryan and everybody else. I'm right now technical project manager at Wonderment Apps, and I'm really excited to work towards making a collaboration between product visionaries and the technology teams, bringing that to the next level to make it a more pleasant and enjoyable experience while doing different types of technology, like building the websites or mobile solutions.
Awesome, great, thank you so much. This is a great team that we have here at Wonderment. We've been building products, as Faraz said, for quite a number of years, and we have worked on everything from kind of small startups that are trying to explore ways to create new innovative technology, all the way to enterprise that has kind of more set foundations in the technology that they're building, but they do it at large scale. So one of the great parts is this team has run across a lot of challenges over the course of time, and they have some great thoughts on how to handle some of those. So today's topic of discussion is how do we work with the product management team to create the best possible handoff that's going to give the tech team the right kind of information and insight to engineer the solution right out of the gate. one of the big challenges that happens in this industry is that that communication breaks down. So the vision of what's happening on the product breaks down when it gets to the engineering team, and things actually get constructed incorrectly. So there's a real need for like a very good communication handoff right at that point, so that we can create the best possible technical products that we can. So Faraz, I know you think about this a lot, and I know this is like one of the big spots that you've worked on in your career, certainly in the last group of years. Can you tell me, like at a high level, what are some of the important spots that you think about uh, as you receive something from product? What are some of the big things that have to happen in that, and what are some how do you prepare?
Sure. So I think the tech handoff is the most critical step in any technology build out, because there is a translation that needs to happen from the product department on the vision of the product to actually the actual execution. And oftentimes, there are things that get lost in translation as part of this process. So at Wonderment Apps, we have very clear processes and guidelines and checklists in order to ensure that this translation happens at the highest level of quality. Some of the things that I would mention, some of the most important things as part of this process could be stuff like assessing the feature sets, the annotated wireframes, the sitemap, the user flows, and the requirements, and making sure that there is early feedback, that's going from technology to the product team. And obviously things like project planning, timeline estimations, the initial build out cost. So there is a variety of different things that we look at, like as part of this translation that I'm happy to actually go into the depth.
Great, thanks so much. Meenakshi, when you receive that handoff from product management, what are some of the kind of initial high level things that you have to keep in mind, and what are some of the challenges that you faced around it?
Yeah. So when we have receive an initial handout, so we look for, as a technology team, we look for many things. So when it comes, it should be very detailed, right? So when someone is giving me a feature, so it might be a feature for the client, but for us, it is a whole. It might be a whole flow, which may not have been defined in a way it could have been. So we fill those missing pieces. So when we look at the flows, we go back with the right questions now, and then not only use the flows, we look at the other aspects of that flow, that what kind of scalability, what kind of metrics, and a lot of other features which might not be related. So we ask the right questions at the right time, so that we know what we are going to build exactly, rather than depending on the later stages. Oh, this is also something which should be built and we forgot. So that's the way we plug in those gaps at the right time. And I think that's what keeps on going on. So that's what gives us the right success path when we are involved in the first prayer.
Great, thank you. I know one of the things that you mentioned in an earlier conversation that we had as well was that it was important for the engineering lead to be in the conversation early with product as well too. You felt like that was an important part of the handoff, correct?
Yes. So, as I said, there's a feature, but there are a lot of technology aspects of this. So how we are going to build it, right? What platform, what kind of infrastructure we are going to use this. So to come to that decision, there are a lot of questions which have finally to be answered from the product team. That's not something technology team can, create on its own. So it's very important that from if we are involved from the day one, we can, go back with those questions, give them a lot of options, rather than looking at the one thing. And when we are on very initial phase or something, they're asking, oh, these are the options which we can build, this will be the cost for this will. So those kind of analysis which can be done timely, and we can save a lot of cost, or maybe we can understand more exactly what the client is looking for.
Yeah.
Rather than.
Yeah, great. One of the things I know is in our process at Wonderment that we really focus on is including the engineering leads in early product sprint processes. So we actually like to have an engineering voice even as we're doing the designs of the product, so that we can actually work on the prototyping with them and have them think about, okay, this, because as Meenakshi said, things like cost and timeline can be greatly affected by a small decision that happens within that environment. Thank you. Timothy, how about you? Like, how did those things impact you as well? Like, what have you come across?
So one of the challenges and goals is, to me, when I receive a product spec, or the description of what features we want, or what type of product we want to build, is to find out what are the most important key features that can can be built in the first place, like a phase one, and then the rest of the features that we can sacrifice or postpone to the later stages of the development, because we are living in a world of constraints, and we want to find the shortest path to the possible win, or when we're building the solution.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I know in product handoffs, one of the amazing parts about product managers, of which that's my background, so I know, is that we get to dream a lot. So we get to come up with a lot of great ideas. And sometimes we deliver those dreams to engineers and they're like, that is a lot, that's huge. So like you said, how can we carve that down to where we get to maybe like an alpha perspective of how you would deliver something in a timely fashion that has kind of the core foundations of it, right? It has the elements necessary, and then build, right? And then we start iterating and sprinting on top of that. Faraz, can you tell me, one of the interesting points that was brought up in here a minute ago was around tech stack. How early in the product handoff process do you think about what tech stack should be used, and when do you know that it's the right thing?
Very early on. So almost from the first annotated wireframes, we start thinking about tech stacks, because it's a balance of performance versus cost. Like, there are some amazing tech stacks available out there, but they're expensive. And the cost of using those tech stacks can be significantly higher than other ones. At the same time, maybe using some of the tech stacks could be a lot faster than some other ones. So you just have to find the right balance for what we are building. A great example of that is, let's say you're building a video pipeline. A video gets uploaded, and then it has to get transformed and to many different formats. And that can be a complex task, if it's a large scale website. So really, like, going and doing the investigation, making sure that you're looking at every available technology stack, and you're choosing the one that's the right fit, and it matches the budget, and it also matches the speed of development.
And the right fit that you're talking about might be directly related to what the product is doing. So you brought up video pipeline, right? There's better tech stacks for certain video pipelines than others, or there could be, like, if you're doing large scale data ETL transformation project, things like that, you're gonna be influenced by those stacks as well as if the company is maybe a startup that's got limited budget that can work with it, versus enterprise, which is looking more for security and safety, right?
Exactly. So like, really looking at what you're delivering to the end user, and making sure that you're not over engineering that piece, and just keep evolving. Maybe something really simple works for day one, to just get a POC, a proof of concept out there. And maybe, like, you could just do something really small, and maybe later on we can revisit that and do it better, and continue thinking about technology scaling along the way. But I would really pay attention to not over engineering day one.
Great, thank you. Meenakshi, what do you think about in making the tech stack decisions? What are some of the qualities that you're considering?
Yep. Yeah, so as Faraz mentioned already, a lot of points, but there are few other very important criterias when we decide our tech stack. So first of all, we look at the requirements. So what that project is, right? So it depends a lot on, is it a project for something which is very highly business computation is going on, or is just a delivery system that something is stored and we are delivering to the user. There's not much business computation going on. So based on these 2 3 criterias, and also that how quickly we want to build it, and how what kind of scalability is going to be, there are a lot of they're kind of, and what kind of devices are we going to support a lot of standardized devices in the market. Oh, so then we need a standard React.js, but no, it's a different simple desktop, so we can just build something something small within, which is on the HTML application. So a lot of what depends on the project requirement. Then we decide, oh, these are the requirements. Oh, it's going to be computation heavy, then I should have like something very strong Java. If it is an enterprise application, then otherwise, if it's a simple delivery from content from database to end user, it can be a simple Node.js application. So depending on those also, we come up with the right platform for the project.
Great. One other thing, maybe you or Timothy can talk about this, but one other element is the sustainability of the tech stack you choose. Timothy, maybe you can talk a little bit about this. That sometimes there's really attractive technical solutions that may have a limited number of developers that can code in it. And you may want to try those, but it also may put the product in a position sustainably over the course of time that is hard to find developers to work on it, or find, can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, exactly. As you mentioned, there is often you facing the problem that some specific developers maybe there are maybe more of them available in the market, and there is another developers that are less available. So when you're choosing the right tech stack, you have to take into consideration what teams you already have, whether you want to let them work with that tech stack. Does they have the right experience in that? Can they start performing from the day one, or whether they will need a lot of time to be onboarded with that? So that's one of also things.
Yeah, great, thank you. Yeah, I think when I'm comprehending the impact of what a tech stack is going to have on the life of a project, it's pretty sizable. So it's a really important decision up front. Some other really important decisions that come into place as well is like how we're working with like the foundational architecture of a project. And I know one of the early ways that the tech team assesses what that architecture has to be is they actually have to dig in and see the way that the flows and the wireframes and all the kind of concepts that are happening in the product stage are going to actually translate into a technical foundation environment. For us, how do you assess user flows and wireframes and think about that process to create the kind of the most efficient backend or structure that you're going to have to build on?
Sure. So, I mean, having done this for a number of years, we have put together some really good guidelines and checklists for the most common feature sets that we build. Like some examples of that could be, let's say you're building authentication and authorization, and so like there are some like top 20, top like 40 that common things that we always look at, and we make sure that we see them in the annotated wireframes. And having those checklists in place, we make sure that we communicate very early on. If we
what are a few of those top ideas that you can think of?
Yeah, sure. So we make sure that number one, we are connected to the requirements when it comes to performance. Something that can be done in 500 milliseconds can also be done in 50 milliseconds, right? But is it worth spending the time, right? So those partnerships that, let's say, you're like, okay, so like, what are the performance requirements? Like, do we really need to focus on that? And also like security best practices. Like, is it a banking standard security, or is it something less than that, right? To make sure that, you know, we are always connected to the requirements, and, you know, like we take a look at our checklists, and making sure that we are actually connecting with the product needs, and building something that's connected to what the product team is asking for, and not something more than that.
Got it. Okay, great. And it's great to present ideas during that initial product engineering period as well, so that they can kind of expand their horizons and what's possible. So Meenakshi, maybe you can talk a little bit more about this too. When you receive user flows and wireframes, what are some of the spots that you actually go in, some of the most important spots that you go in and you assess in the early stage that will impact technical development?
Thank you, Ryan. Yeah.
Yeah, no worries.
So when we initially receive wireframes and user flows, we review them in depth, and we generally look for like end-to-end flow. Are these flows, from where they're starting and where they are ending, are making any sense? Is there any kind of, I mean, especially when it says, oh, like upload a video, who is uploading a video, where this video will go, what has to be happened with that video, right? So all those small details we try to, if it is not in wireframe, we look for questions. Okay, video is someone saying, so what are the available types of videos the user can what is the size, what are the validation issues, and what kind of process they want to show on the wireframe. So these are the specific details which we look in for. Apart from that, from the details, what are the user types? When you say user flow, so what are the user types available, what is their audience types, how they are related to each other? So that's what we are look into the
Yeah,
user and the wireframes.
and like you were saying, the user types specifically, that's a good example that actually can affect what permissions have to be set throughout it, right?
Right,
So different users might have very different experiences.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So if it is built for admin, maybe it might be related to content. So when it comes to user types, it has to be either content related, what content is accessible to which user, what functionalities are related, accessible to that particular user, how we are monitoring, or what metrics are for those users, how they are connected. So these kind of things which we look for in user flows.
Correct. Yeah. And I know on the product side, we're thinking about that from an audience perspective as well, right? So what can impact the actual usage and adoption, and obviously the retention of the product over the course of time. So can we create the right kind of technical tools for that? That's really good. Thank you. Timothy, when you receive some wireframes and user flows and some of the other assets from product, what are some of the initial things that you find really important that you look at?
Well, first of all, I'm trying to assess and understand whether there is a shorter path to success with some feature. Maybe.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one.
And the second part is that corner cases. Usually they are not well thought out because of our nature. We're trying to think about the positive cases, right? But when you draw in a UML diagram with engineers and trying to actually put the names of parameters that are feeding into the system, we are discovering a lot of the points of blank spots where we can discuss and improve the specification. So that's
great. Yeah, that's a great example. I know we do think a lot in terms of happy path, right? Like, so that we can kind of take users down the one that's really successful. But the truth is, there's actually just oftentimes just an extensive number of potential options or variations of end result that can happen, and that is like one of the engineering challenges. Is like, can you envision all of those scenarios before they happen to the user first, right? That's a big challenge.
Yeah, and also just to add to that, Ryan, I think oftentimes a lot of these things, get caught after we translate the product user flows to technical user flows.
Yeah.
And like doing that translation, we catch a lot of like early misses. And it's a great time to catch them because it could get a lot more expensive a month down the line. So thinking about, those like technical user flows day one, and making sure that the technical user flows are on the same page as the product user flows. I think that can add a huge value to the final build out.
Can you describe really quickly what's important to document in your technical user flows? Like, what are some of the key things that you have to make sure in there that maybe aren't coming from the wireframes?
Sure. Oftentimes there is an algorithm that needs to be basically thought of as part of the product requirements. And the product requirement does have all the use cases, it has the business scenario and all of that. But once we actually put this algorithm on a piece of paper, then as Timothy said, we're like, oh, how about this piece? How about this piece? Like, what if this happens? What if there is a 404 at this step of the process? Like, what if this service is not responding as part of this bigger pipeline, right? There are a lot of what ifs that we catch during that technology user flow. And we can immediately go back to the product team and be like, look, like there are some, like we need some more information. So I think, yeah, like again, like capturing those very early on can actually introduce a lot of cost savings to the final build out of the project.
It's huge. Yeah, I agree. And I think it also presents just a number of other kind of openings in engineering that has to be developed that a product person can't see on the page and has no idea. And I know that's a common scenario. Question for you, Meenakshi. What are some spots that maybe the product people often don't think about when they're creating the wireframes? Are there some common areas that you technically end up having to bring into the picture?
Yeah. Like very often we generally see missing is the, like, what are the kind of validations are there. Let's say there is a form, right? There are 10 fields on it. So generally most of the time, what kind of validations have to be applied to there, right? And what kind of messages has to be there. Sometimes, like, and I submit a form and there is no message. What is the success message we have to give? So then when we get these things, when we are actually implementing and then we find it missing, oh, this is missing. So these are the things which are details if already in the wireframes. So this makes more our process smoother.
Great, thanks. Timothy, how about you? Is there anything on this front that you find that the product teams regularly, they may not know, but something they do can impact the technical development side?
Yeah, sometimes we missing the moment that not every area in the world has the same good quality internet connection. And when we build in a software, we have to take in, especially the one that relies on the good connection. We have to keep in mind that there will be a lot of places when we're trying to grab some data from the remote server or push that to that place. And in case if there is a really laggy connection, user might see that some strange views, right? If we don't put the right loader, or you can click book taxi twice if we don't block the UI layer, and what will happen next? The taxi arrives. So those like things we have to envision them and prevent those from happening.
Yeah, that was really good, Tim. Thank you. And one thing that I'm going to add, Ryan, my number one favorite item is business logic translation. And as I said, product managers are storytellers. They want to tell a story, and engineers are a little more 0 and 1, and they are after like exactness and accuracy. So I think like that's when the technical project management like can play a very important role. That okay, how do we translate this story that into something that's a little more like 0 and 1 with like if statements. So oftentimes what happens is that we receive the requirements, and then at the very early stage of the process we look at these like feature sets and these requirements, and you're like, oh, okay, this is good, this is great, but we need to add some translation on top of that. So that's when the technical project manager gets together with the product manager, and they partner up and they work on these translations together.
One of the things that often is not translated very well for the product manager, because they don't necessarily think about these things, is the impact of infrastructure on some product decisions that are made. I mean, you brought up the video pipeline earlier, right? Like, one of the big things is like the infrastructure elements tied to that, depending on the scale of the project, could be so significant, and they never thought about it, so that translation gets missed. Can you talk about how infrastructure is like a spot in here that's like one that we sometimes hit and sometimes miss?
Yeah, definitely. So infrastructure, is mostly on the technology side of things, but in my opinion, it's a partnership with the product team. And the reason for that is you really need to define the application scalability and traffic requirements day one. So building a video pipeline for a 100 user base website is pretty easy. Anyone can do that. But what if you're receiving 100 requests per second, and all of a sudden that becomes a very complex technology challenge? So we have a very detailed questionnaire that we actually present to the product team and the client. And as part of, like, we have about 45 questions that, we really try to define the scalability and the traffic growth, in the next 3 months, 6 months, and 1 year. So to make sure that we are predicting and, thinking about, these traffic growths in the short run and also in the long run. So that's one of the biggest ones. And then there are also things like, choosing the right cloud infrastructure. There's so many cloud infrastructures available today.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, like there is, and then every cloud infrastructure can have, the advantages, the disadvantages. But again, working with the product team, we can really define the right cloud infrastructure for the right client. And there are things like, user region. Where are the users distributed, in the globe? Are most of your users in the West Coast? Are they in the East Coast? Or they are in Europe? And knowing this information, it's going to help you to distribute the right servers and the right instances in the right part of the globe. And obviously, there is the architecture of the infrastructure that can be extremely important. Just making sure that you're architecting your cloud correctly, and obviously the hosting cost. Making sure that you choose the right technology in your cloud, and finally the security requirements, and assessing that what security requirements you need to be implementing for your application, asking the right questions, and implementing the right solutions.
Awesome. Yeah, it's huge. I think you brought up something really interesting too, which is really around making the right or wrong decisions around the cost aspect of things. And I think that also one of the other aspects that we think about, as well as how the timeline can be impacted unexpectedly like this. Nakshi, maybe you can talk a little bit about what are some things you think about when you look, and infrastructure is a good starting point. When you look at the cost and the timeline, how do you evaluate that based on the assets that you're receiving from product? What are some things that you do?
Yep. Yeah. So as Fraz mentioned, that scalability is one major, reason which plays the major role in the cost of the infrastructure. But apart from that, we also look into what kind of availability and is looking the client is looking for, right? So let's say I have set up a cloud, and it's not in my in my infrastructure, it's a cloud infrastructure, so there's a SLA to it. It may go down. So is how much client is wants, oh, it's okay to it, the client side goes for 5 minutes, it's okay to go down for 1 hour. If they're not okay with it, let's say it's an enterprise application, right? So there will be a lot of extra infrastructure we will be preparing, so that if something goes down, we can quickly put up the another region, right? So that plays very high cost. It is very good, but it comes with a very high cost, all the availability and the reachability options. So I think that's one which plays major role. Let's say when my DB goes down, do I have another DB available so that I can switch over, but it costs you double, right? Is client going to pay for that? Are they ready? Meanwhile, or I should be able to get from the backup, and get from the backup, and it should take an hour. So is client ready to get the site down for 1 hour? So that kind of questions also comes when we design the infrastructure.
Great, thank you.
And I'm so sorry, just to add to that, Ryan, like oftentimes, it comes down to redundancy requirements that, the client is like, I want to have 99.9% uptime. And then we're like, okay, like in order to guarantee that, you need to make sure that, you have redundant servers, in like different regions of like AWS services. You're in West, you're in East, and even within West, you're in, like different AZs. So, oftentimes it's just looking at the requirements and making sure that, okay, if you're looking for 99.9% uptime, these are the cost implications. And then making sure that, like you choose the right redundancy for the clients, depending on their needs.
Yeah, that's huge, and that has very real cost associated as well to it, to be able to have that kind of security of the uptime and security and consistency. Those are all elements that have to be communicated back depending on the feature sets that are chosen by product. There's some other like big costs that take place as well, that we have to think about, which is just the actual development or construction costs that go into the process. Timothy, maybe you could talk to us a little bit about how you look at some of these assets and think about resource allocation based on cost or based on skill sets, and like what you need to analyze and related to that.
Yeah, so of course, basically, if we are dealing with existing teams, we would want to know what are their past experience are with which cloud solution they are worked in the past, because right now almost every cloud solution has a competitive services on their list of available features, but you can use almost every cloud environment in a wrong or in the right way, so that you can load for instance, you can have a fast database and you can put a heavy files into that. And instead of putting it into the cold storage for persistence, right? So like assessing the past experience of engineers who is on the board and understanding what they has experience in, that will be a major driver in this decision.
Great. And what other decisions? So I know there's some, so let's say you receive a set of wireframes and business requirements. What do you look for quickly to decide what development resources to put on it?
So you're not like talking about the cloud.
Well, I mean, it's all of it, right? So you have infrastructure, you have development, and then maybe even QA. I mean, all these pieces come into play, but specifically for development, like when you look at them, like how do you say, I think I'm going to need a senior developer for this, or I'm going to need a junior developer here. What are some of the things that you contemplate?
So there is some like basic best practices over coming up with a team. So that everybody on the team has a space to grow, to lead others, to grow in a different directions. So of course there is like trends of having one lead and then 1-2 seniors and then several mid-level engineers and the juniors. But to be more specific, when you're receiving the requirements.
Just to add to what Timothy is saying here, Ryan, I think a lot of the times, like you look at the complexity of the feature and also how much experience your developers have had in the past. Like, for example, if you're building a very complex search algorithm, and they can get really complex sometimes. So you want to probably, and go and assign one of your senior developers who have like search experience in the past. If you are building a form that takes some inputs from like from the user, and you're just saving some parameters in a database, you could go with a mid-level developer to save some cost. So just really like assessing the complexity of the feature, and also looking at, okay, this person has done authentication in the past, this person has done video pipeline in the past, this person has done search algorithms in the past, or like all the other like technology features. And I think that could actually introduce a lot of cost saving to your project.
Yeah, that's great. Meenakshi, I'm interested in hearing about this from you as well. I know you place a lot of team members onto projects and have to think about those skill sets. What are some things that you think about as well as you're going through this?
Yeah, so as far as the first thing which we always look at the requirements, wireframes. So then we analyze, oh, what kind of requirement is it like more of a front end heavy site which we are building, or it is more back end heavy. So depending on deciding the complexity of each component which has to be built, then we come up, oh, for this that there's a lot of CSS and there's a lot of responsive, then it means we need definitely a lead UI developer. And similarly for the backend engineer, if there is something which is what kind of skills are required for that backend engineer, they should know the AWS cloud also, and they should know also the some language basic like .NET or Java, whichever platform is required. So depending on this, what all has to be built, so we just come up with the right requirements for a resource, and then we see, oh, this is the right resource for this requirement. And also lot depends on the cost, right? If it's a very small project, and even if there's something critical has to be built, but there's not, because when we decide the number of resources or the kind of skills required for it, comes with a cost, but maybe that cost doesn't fit. So maybe we can go with the lower end and put some extra, ask that particular resource to build some extra skills over that. So that's
right.
All goes on.
Great. Yeah. So what I hear from you is there's a lot of considerations when you're taking into account, but the first thing you look at is, do we have these skill sets immediately available to execute on it? And then how much are those going to cost depending on what they are? And it's to Faraz's point earlier, how complex is that feature to actually build? And if we stuck a lower cost, lower cost is maybe like, but if we stuck a lower skilled developer on it, would they be able to even complete it, or would they do it in a way that was performant? So those are all big issues. Great. I think this is an excellent rundown of how we look at and assess the handoff between product management and tech. There's a lot more to cover here. We just kind of opened the can of worms, but I think these are some big topics that we talked about today, which really range from how we look at how resource selection to infrastructure to thinking about how we handle all of the assessments of the wireframes and the user flows, and just look at the whole thing as one kind of big organic process where we have to communicate a vision that's happening from the product team to something that's actually executable by the tech team, and can be done within the time and the budget allocation that is possible. I appreciate all of you sharing today. It was great insight, and I'm sure anyone having taken the few minutes to sit and watch this will have learned a lot. Is there anything you'd like to say as we're heading out? Faraz, would you like to say anything?
No, thank you so much, Ryan. As you said, there is a lot more to be covered, and you probably need hours more to to actually dig in and talk about this handoff. But I think this was a great start, and I'm looking forward to having more roundups and talk about this topic. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Meenakshi, would you like to say anything?
Thank you. It was a great session. The way we put all thoughts together. When we work, we may not be even thinking that much, but when we are specifically asking each and every question, it brings really a lot of value what we are thinking and how we are doing things. So it's great putting them together here.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for sharing. And Timothy, how about you?
Oh, yeah, I enjoyed this time, and I'd like to ask the listeners to come up with their thoughts on these topics and write in the comments so that we can relate to them and maybe improve the way how we perform the handoffs.
Yeah, no, there's lots of developers and engineering leads that face this every day. So yeah, it'd be great to hear some of the thoughts as well. So thank you all. We're Wonderment Apps. We're located at www.wondermentapps.com. We service two core lines of business. Number one is we do manage projects, so we can take a project from start to finish, from product all the way through tech into QA. So that's number one. Number two, we have a great staff augmentation service line where we have very talented, well-curated developers that can execute on your teams quickly. So if you ever need any help, please don't hesitate to reach out. Otherwise, we look forward to sharing with you more thoughts and just contributing to making technology development better all the way around. So thank you for having us and listening today, and that's it.